Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Non-Scripted Ramblings. I'm Kendall Richardson, thank you so much for joining me as always, and this is going to be an emotional episode and you're probably going to see me cry again, because damn. This is episode 8 of WandaVision, my thoughts and just plethora of feelings that I'm having about this episode, which is titled Previously On, which again, another phrase used in television, used appropriately as a title for an episode, because this is an episode of flashbacks, of answers, of catching us up to speed basically with where Wanda's at, how the Hex was formed, and just it's just great. I just finished watching it again for the second time a few minutes ago, and I'm still in the feels zone. I cried more the second time. I cried the first time watching this, and I cried the second time as well. So prepare for some feels when I get on these teary moments through this review. So thank you for joining me for this. Let's dive in. Last week's episode ended with Wanda stumbling on, Agatha Harkness, basically. We got that huge reveal and the Agatha All Along theme song, which was just amazing. And we're picking right back up where we left off last week, and with a flashback, though, to start us first, because the Marvel Studios logo turns to purple, which I loved, because purple's my favorite color, and obviously it was a nod to Agatha. So we get flashback of her a kind of origin story, I suppose, or just some backstory on her. She originates from the Salem witch trials in 1693, Salem, Massachusetts, except she was being put on trial or executed, as it were, by her coven, by her peers, because she had attained knowledge and power beyond her age and station, which just made me think of Caecilius from Doctor Strange, because he was, studying under the Ancient One at Kamar-Taj, and then, got a feel for the dark arts and learned about Dormammu, and then, went above and beyond the Ancient One, and in that respect, in terms of that darkness. So this very kind of parallel story, very similar here. This was an epic scene. Just Catherine Hahn, man, this she keeps outdoing herself week after week, and this has got to be like her just. This was her time to shine. I mean, this was everyone's time to shine this episode. Well, when I say everyone, I mean mostly Agatha and Wanda, because they're our two main players for this whole episode. But just the fun Catherine Hahn gets to have playing this character, and I love the subtleties and the turn. Like, her mother is the head of this coven, which is all the more heartbreaking for her backstory. She betrayed her mother, and her mother betrayed her in kind, I suppose, and she's begging her to stop the deception, because she's pleading with her, like, don't do this, don't execute me, I can be good, all this stuff, and then her face changes ever so subtly, and you go from good to villain straight away, and it's just so good. And then the fact that they're all trying to execute her, and she's basically taking all of their powers. All of the blue beams of energy turn to purple, and she's sucking the life force, essentially, out of her fellow witches. And then her mother, who tries to stop her, and you see this blue crown sort of form, of magic sort of form above her head, kind of similar to the Scarlet Witch headdress that we see in the comics. But yeah, she kills her own mother, steals the brooch, and that's the brooch she's basically worn in every episode up until now. So that was really cool. Such a good way to start the episode. I'm wondering, though, if I think that Agatha was showing Wanda that, because, I mean, it wasn't just for the audience. I feel like that was because, at the end of last week's episode, Wanda's eyes glowed purple. So I think that Agatha is showing Wanda who she is and where she got her magic from, like her intense power, and the fact that she's been around for like, you know, nearly 400 years at this point. It's just nuts. Yeah, and then I really loved this kind of, you know, different takes on witches in the MCU, because, you know, Wanda has no idea that she's a witch, first off. Like, she knows she has, you know, abilities, and she can manipulate and create and hear people's thoughts, all that stuff. She doesn't call herself as a witch. I mean, we know up until this point no one has uttered the word Scarlet Witch when talking about her. So she's all confused when and Agatha's all likewise confused when she's trying to say, you know, these runes on the walls are protection, you know, it's a basic protection hex, protection spell, means that, you know, whoever, the witch that, you know, imbues them with power in a certain space can be the only witch that uses powers. I really like that, and it gave the, you know, made sense to, you know, delay the magical fight between the two of them, which is obviously going to take place in the last episode next week. Yeah, so that's good. And then just her explaining certain spells like transmutation, turning that cicada into a bird, and then explaining the whole Pietro thing, or she calls him Fietro because he's fake Pietro, and I thought that was hilarious. I love that Catherine Hahn can simultaneously be funny and sinister at the same time. Like, few people could pull that off, and she just nails it. So basically she explains that Fietro is what she referred to as a crystalline possession. Basically he was her eyes and ears, so not actually Agatha, but like everything that he was, you know, taking in was you know, going directly to her. So that's why she was able to recall the specific words from Wanda's conversations with Pietro about the endless nothingness and all of that. So yeah, so now the question just remains whether or not you know, Evan Peters' Pietro is, you know, actually Pietro from an alternate universe, because last week we talked about Nexus beings, and the Nexus of all realities, which is supposedly, you know, maybe hinted at as this point. So whether or not she's pulled him from this, because she strictly says she couldn't use the real Pietro, and she says necromancy was out of the question because you know, he's buried on a completely different continent and he's filled with holes because of the gunshot wounds and all that. It's very dark. So yeah, so it's either that or it literally was just a red herring to throw us off, a wink to the camera to be like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if, you know, you try to put in a substitute Pietro and it looked like Evan Peters, like, because they can do that because they own Fox. So it doesn't have to be actually alternate universe Pietro. It could just as a wink to us, like a cool Easter egg for us and to throw us off the scent. So it's probably more likely the latter, but who knows? We still don't definitively know the answer. We just know that Agatha was controlling, you know, listening and watching everything unfold as Pietro. So yeah, basically, then Agatha's like, let's go. We need to, you know, I need to figure out how you did all this. The fact that you made Westview, the fact that there are, you know, there is magic stretched miles to the outskirts of town, as we've seen on the previous episodes. You know, the fact that she's able to wield this kind of control, all these storylines going at once, you know, as she's shown, it's so cool, as she's explaining these kinds of spells and transforming the cicada and bending it to her will, she's also linking that to what Wanda's able to do, and the fact that Wanda can do it on such a scale that Agatha doesn't understand and wants to know why. She also mentions that she was drawn here, so despite the fact that this basement of hers seems to be ancient and old, maybe it's an illusion, maybe it's something she conjured, because obviously she can create illusions and transmutate objects into things, so maybe her power can manipulate the space. I mean, and she seems pretty powerful, so if Wanda can do an entire town, maybe Agatha can just do a small space. But yes, she says she was drawn there and felt the power and had to investigate for herself what was going on. And so basically we get Agatha taking Wanda through all these traumatic memories and trying to find the root of the problem, the root of the, how the hex was created, and just what kind of power does Wanda truly wield. So our first flashback takes us to Sokovia, of course, in the late 90s, when Wanda and Pietro are kids, and we get to meet their parents. I think it was Irina and Oleg, I believe their names are. And I was so happy about this scene because I had a theory of mine confirmed. I mean, yes, it wasn't really much of a, it was a no-brainer, essentially. The fact that I guessed pretty early on that Wanda's, the whole reason she was using sitcoms was because of the whole, a lot of people in non-English speaking countries, such as Sokovia, even though it's fictional, such as, Sokovia, which is in Eastern Europe, would watch American television or American films to learn English. So I was right on that count. And then the fact that the sitcoms, that she was watching, and we see the box filled of the sitcoms that her dad has, and he's going to sell so he can get more, I think. We have I Love Lucy, The Addams Family, Malcolm in the Middle, Who's the Boss, like there's a plethora of them in this box. And they are all about, these families and having good times and loving each other and, shenanigans, of course, and they even mention the word shenanigans in the episode. And we see they watch the Dick Van Dyke Show because it's her favourite, it's Wanda's favourite, and she gets to choose. So it just kind of, the sitcom thing obviously takes her back to a time before all of her trauma began, and B, the fact that, later on when she's talking to Vision at the Avengers compound, and she mentions the fact, because he's like, is he really injured, and is that why it's funny? And she goes, oh no, he's fine. And he's like, why? Well, it's not this kind of show. And then back to her as a kid, she's like, well, everything will be okay. It's, everything resets at the end of every episode, happy endings, all of that jazz. So, yeah. So it's just, it all kind of comes back to that, and that's why she chose sitcoms as a way to create this world, because that's the world she idolized growing up, and has always really turned to in times of struggle, because, when Vision walks in later on at the Avengers compound, she's watching Malcolm in the Middle. So, and then when she's at the Hydra base, after her encounter with the Mind Stone, which I'll get to shortly, she's watching the Brady Bunch. So she turns to these sitcoms it's her coping mechanism. It's her way of processing her trauma or taking her out of the trauma, making everything all right, because she watches these families, she's living vicariously through them, and she knows at the end of every episode, everything resets, goes back to normal, happy endings all round. So it's, I was very happy to be right about that. But yes, another really cool thing was obviously showing us the bombing, the death, sadly, of her parents, and the Stark bomb that was mentioned all the way back in Age of Ultron, when Pietro and Wanda are talking to Ultron about, their motivation for why they're joining up with him, and for why they joined Hydra in the first place, and why they hate Tony Stark so much. So, yeah, and we finally get to see that acted out in this flashback. And there's a red flashing light. And if you'll recall, in the first ad we saw, it was for a Stark Industries toaster. And the only thing on it that was in colour was a red light. And it was blinking the exact same way as the bomb. And I'm like, that is poetic cinema. It was so good. And then the slogan also came to mind for the toaster: forget the past, this is your future. Which is kind of, I guess, a ways of saying that, this is going to come back later in the show, but in her past, and also speaks to the fact that, she doesn't remember how she created the hex, and she even says that again to Agatha when Agatha's trying to pry it out of her. She's like, I didn't do anything, I don't know what you're talking about. Because she just has blocked it out of her mind completely, because she's just not wanting to deal with it, obviously. But yeah, it was so good to see to see that. The first moment I started getting emotional though was during the scene before the bomb goes off, and when that bomb hit, and that was shocking. Like, I think I jumped the first time I watched it because it's like, oh god. But the score like the music on this thing is, in this whole episode, is amazing, but the score underneath her watching, like them as a family watching the Dick Van Dyke Show, moved me so much I started tearing up, because, you know, we're seeing Wanda's face and how happy she is, and she's watching the Dick Van Dyke Show. We're seeing similar, like, you know, scenes from the Dick Van Dyke Show that she used as inspiration for her own version with Vision. I'm getting emotional already. I knew I was going to get emotional. And, you know, it makes all the more sense as to why they brought on Dick Van Dyke as a consultant for that episode, for these early episodes of WandaVision, so they could nail the sitcom aspect, because they needed it to be very precise, and it's so precise and so powerful, and that music just amplifies it so much, and I got so emotional watching that. Anyway, so the big takeaway from this first flashback though is the fact that I'm gonna call her Agnes. Agatha says that it seems Wanda used a probability hex on the bomb to prevent it from going off. So she's come to the conclusion that Wanda used magic to prevent the bomb. She's like, you really think it was a dud? You know, because Wanda's like, it was a dud, it just didn't go off. For 2 days, we just sat there and it didn't do anything. And Agatha basically tells her, no, you used magic without realizing it, and that's why you guys survived. Like, she's like, all of this heartbreak and devastation surrounding you, and you guys were okay for 2 days and nothing happened. So, the big reveal, Wanda has had powers all along. She was born with them. And that also speaks to, you know, the mutants, and whether or not they're going to be introduced in the MCU now that Marvel and Disney own the word mutant again, and the rights to the X-Men and all of that jazz. So I think that's fantastic. She was born with these powers, which means Pietro was probably born with his abilities of speed, you know, being Quicksilver. So, but again, when we go to the next flashback, which is our trip to the Hydra base, and we see Wanda being experimented on, you know, in terms of just her walking into this room, stating her name and that she's volunteering for this, and she steps closer to, we see Loki's scepter in all its glory, and I got a little squee moment because I'm like, oh, reference to my man. Anyway, and then the jewel that encapsulates the Mind Stone comes out and comes towards Wanda, and, you know, part of you thinks either it's the Infinity Stone working, being drawn to Wanda, or maybe it's Wanda drawing it to her, and she subconsciously, because she doesn't know she's a witch at this point, even though she has these powers, she just is not aware of them because no one was around to tell her. So maybe her parents knew that they had powers, who knows? We don't know. But then, you know, the jewel shatters and the Mind Stone is revealed, and we see Wanda seeing the Scarlet Witch. It's this silhouette of Scarlet Witch from the comics, with the crown going on and the cape and everything. Like, it's gorgeous. It's this brief moment and it's over after like 2 seconds. But I was like wondering what to make of it, because at first I thought maybe it was a little bit on the nose, a little bit cheesy, but the more I've thought about it, and after, you know, doing some research and watching some other people talk about it, just the conclusion seems to be that this is Scarlet Witch Wanda seeing herself as the Scarlet Witch. This is her seeing her future, and what she's going to become by the end of this, or by the end of Doctor Strange or something. You know, she's going to become Scarlet Witch, and that's what this episode is about, and that's what WandaVision as a whole is also about, in a way, is Wanda's journey to actually becoming Scarlet Witch. So, yeah. And then it was interesting to see that the Mind Stone managed to also alter the security footage of the event, because the Hydra agents are trying to figure out what the hell happened and watch it back on camera, but it's gone. It's just been edited out from her standing there to her dropped on the ground, passed out. So, that was kind of cool, a kind of little connection maybe to Wanda's own editing of some of the scenes in the earlier episodes. What else could I mention? Oh yeah, for the Goddess Within, that's the tagline of the Hydra soap, the soap for the Goddess Within, right? And I guess, you know, Scarlet Witch is within her, so I don't know, maybe I'm stretching, but that's kind of what I'm thinking that might be connected to. I don't know. Okay, what else do we have? Oh yeah, so the stone amplified her power. So basically this is how Wanda goes from being your average run-of-the-mill witch to the Scarlet Witch, because the Mind Stone unlocks this part of her and just amplifies times a million what she had underneath. Agatha mentions the fact that if this had not occurred, her powers probably would have dwindled and gone away eventually, because she wasn't using them, because she wasn't aware she had them. So this basically keeps her as a permanent, powerful being, the Mind Stone. So very cool. From there we go to our third flashback, where we see Wanda just after the events of Age of Ultron, watching an episode of Malcolm in the Middle, and Vision phases through the wall because she can sense him outside the door, and he on the other side of the wall, and he comes through similar to how he did in Civil War, even though Wanda's like, we talked about this in Civil War. But yes, he comes in to try and comfort her, basically, because she's obviously still in this heavy state of grief over losing Pietro, and she kind of has a go at him in a way. She's like, you know, the only thing that would bring me comfort is seeing him again. And because Vision can't obviously make that happen, you know, she's like, I don't want to hear anything from anyone at this point. If you can't give me Pietro, then I'm sorry. But then she, you know, she realizes that she maybe, I don't know, she was right to say it, but maybe she was a bit harsh, and she apologizes to Vision, and then Vision kind of goes into this beautifully written, and this was my favorite part of the episode, just right here, this moment, and I'm probably going to get emotional again, but just this scene where he's talking to her and explaining the fact that all he's ever known is being alone. Like, he's just been on his own. He's never had anyone to love in order to lose them. So he's never experienced loss. So he you know, he's just has not. This is not something that he's really familiar with and knows how to handle or deal with or understand, but he seems to be grasping that through experiencing it with Wanda, as you know, a place, trying to comfort her basically. But then he says this beautiful line, which is, what is grief if not love persevering? And I'm sorry, whoever wrote this episode, can I just bow down before you, because wow, if that ain't the tagline of the entire series of this show, like, really, it's so good. Yeah, like it, and that's true. That's exactly what grief is. It's exactly, they put the nail on the head, like, in such a beautiful poetic way of saying it, you know, and giving it an almost positive spin. Like, grief is a horrible thing. We've all experienced it. It's a terrible feeling. But you're right. He's right. It's love, you know, toughing it out, I guess, within you. Like, it's the loss of a person that you loved, still holding on strong to you, so persevering. And I just thought that was just beautiful. And yeah, my favorite quote from the whole series so far. Done. Nailed it. Ugh, I'm gonna cry again. Anyway, but that was beautiful. That was a beautiful scene. So from there, Wanda's almost ready to give up, and Agatha is like, no, we are so close. We are so close to this thing. Let's go. You know, what happened next? How did you create the hex? Come on, tell me everything. Let's show me how this happened. And so she kind of riles Wanda up a bit, and then Wanda, you know, sees, you know, Agatha opens the door to S.w.o.r.d to her, and she walks through and steps back into her past self from only a couple weeks ago when this whole thing started. She went to S.w.o.r.d. Now, this was a huge revelation, this whole sequence. I freaking loved it. So she goes in and she's trying to, you know, be convinced to let in because she's like, you know, Vision deserves a funeral, or at least I deserve it because, you know, he's my love, right? You know, she's clearly so upset. You know, it's only a few days, if not weeks, after she returned. So she's like, I know you have him. Let me see him. Let me take him. It's my right as his next of kin, essentially. And Hayward lets her in, and she, you know, confronts him, and he's a little standoffish with her at first, just kind of, you know, playing it safe, I guess, but then kind of just being a jerk. Just from then on. I mean, I've been calling him Director Douchebag for a reason, and he really showed his true colours in this episode, just not gonna lie. Yeah, basically, you know, he shows Wanda what they're doing, and we get the shot of Vision in pieces on those different tables, like we saw from the security footage a few episodes back when Hayward showed everyone that footage, and we now know he's just lying through his teeth this entire time. And immediately, as soon as Wanda realizes that it's Vision, she just almost breaks down, and she's like, stop it, what are you doing to him? And Hayward's like, well, we're dismantling, you know, this sentient weapon. It's our legal and ethical right to do this. And I'm just sitting there like, are you fucking serious? Like, dude, you were the one crapping on about the frickin' Sokovia Accords and Vision's living will and how Wanda violated them by taking his body, and we learn in this episode that she didn't do that at all. That's not what happened. Oh my god, I hate him. And, you know, Wanda's just like, well, I just want to bury him. I just want his body. I just want to bury him. And Hayward's like, no, you really think I'm going to let you put $3 billion worth of vibranium in the ground? So he's so disrespectful. She's like, I'm his next of kin. This is ridiculous. And then Hayward happens to mention the fact that, you know, A, Wanda is Vision's soulmate, and B, the fact that he thinks, or he's convinced of the fact that Wanda could actually bring him back. But he says back online first, which was, you know, and he tries to cover up with, you know, back to life afterwards. But I'm like, no, mate, you were being disrespectful on purpose. Stop being a jerk. I hate you. And and then, you know, he says, you know, he isn't yours to her, and that's the last straw. And she breaks the glass, goes down, and, you know, they've got their guns pointed at her, and Hayward tells them, stand down, it's okay. And she walks over to where Vision's head is laying on this little table, little thing, and she starts I'm gonna cry again. She starts using her powers on him like she did in Infinity War at the start. I am crying, fuck. Sorry. And, you know, she's doing the thing to the stone, like to where the stone would be. And because Infinity War, you know, Vision's, when she's doing it to Vision's like, what do you feel? What do you see? And she's just like, I just feel you. And here, she's doing the same thing, and she says, I can't feel you. Like, more than once. And God in heaven. Yeah, I lost it from here. I really lost it from here. It's just so heartbreaking. So heartbreaking. But anyway, moving on from that into more heartbreaking stuff. She doesn't take him. We cut straight from there, straight to Wanda walking out of S.w.o.r.d, getting into her car, which I love the fact that it was like this gorgeous dark red colour. And she's got this letter on the passenger seat, and she looks at it and then drives away and finds herself in Westview, New Jersey. And she gets there, and we drive through the town, and it's this kind of rundown, dilapidated little town now. Like, there's nothing special about it. It's not thriving. It's in a poor state. We see a few of the characters, like Phil, hanging up a music thing, piano lessons. We see Mrs. Hart on the street, kind of having a coffee but looking a bit forlorn, and And then we see the postman, who's actually a, you know, kind of run-down looking pizza delivery guy, and Wanda keeps driving. Like the pool, I think it looks like the pool from Dottie's place, or the country club, or wherever that, you know, thing in episode 2 is all just tattered and dirty and gross. And then she eventually arrives at their address, the 2800, you know, house. But it's just, you know, foundations. There's nothing on it. She gets out of the car, walks in, opens the envelope, and I'm gonna cry again. And there's the deed to the property, and, you know, and it's got Wanda's and Vision's name on it, and then in a heart circled on, you know, on top of it, Vision is written to grow old in, and then signed it V. I'm sorry. This is just And it's so funny considering back in the day, like watching Civil War and seeing them kind of connecting, I didn't fully buy the relationship. Like, for some reason, I mean, yeah, I know in the comics Scarlet Witch and Vision are a thing, but I didn't see it working in the MCU, but my mind has completely changed now, of course, like, Jesus Christ. Oh, but yeah, I think the heart is a direct reference to the heart on the calendar, and so maybe the August 23rd date that had the heart on it was probably the date that Wanda actually got there. I don't know, that's my guess, but... And then she, yeah, rightly so, breaks down and creates the hex, and this is the beginning of the whole thing. She creates the house, and then she decides to go further and create the entire hex as a whole, and turns Westview into its 1950s sitcom style. And then we see her create Vision. So now we know that the Vision that's been inside the hex this whole time is not the Vision that was at S.w.o.r.d in pieces, because she never stole the body. She actually used whatever energy of the Mind Stone that was left inside her to create a new Vision. And this also explains why, you know, he doesn't have any memories of his life before Westview, because how could he? He didn't exist before then. And so he's formed, and then, you know, she's in shock that she's been able to do this, and he speaks, you know, Wanda, welcome home, and then we see Wanda step into frame as her 50s sitcom self. And I'm just a bundle of emotion, and and then, you know, we see you know, real-time Wanda watching them on the couch, and then it cuts to a shot of, you know, the cameras in the studio and the audience seats everywhere, and then Agatha's sitting up there and just says bravo with the slow clap, and then disappears. And then we hear Billy and Tommy screaming out on the street for Wanda to help them, and then Wanda runs out, and Agatha, in her true form, with her, you know, awesome kind of looking comic book inspired outfit, has the boys, you know, on these kind of, you know, magical leashes, I suppose, and she's choking them, holding them hostage. And Agatha has come to the conclusion that, you know, she realizes what Wanda is. She says, you're a myth, you're supposed to be a myth, a being capable of spontaneous creation. You have no idea how dangerous you are. And then, yeah, she implies quite heavily that the kids were also made, because she's like, don't hurt my children. And she goes, no, yes, you're your children. And Vision, this whole thing that you've made. So she specifically refers to them as being made. So I guess, you know, that's going to be a heartbreaking revelation for Wanda when she finds out maybe that they can't exist outside the hex, because I think this is heavily also implying that, because remember a couple episodes ago we saw Vision couldn't get out of the hex, and part of me thought it was Wanda keeping him in, but it looks like it's actually the hex keeping him in, because he can't exist without it to power him, I guess, maybe. Or just, yeah, he only exists in this reality that Wanda's created. And same goes for the kids, it seems. But yes, Agatha Harkness drops a bomb, says, "This is chaos, Magic Wanda, which makes you the Scarlet Witch." And God, did I scream. Another thing I was so excited about the fact that earlier on when Director Douchebag was like, you know, does she have a funny nickname like all the others? And they were like, well, no, she's just Wanda Maximoff. And I'm like, I think we're gonna get Scarlet Witch revealed this season on WandaVision. And yes, correct. I was very happy. And just so excited at the same time to hear the word Scarlet Witch said out loud in the MCU. And she says the Scarlet Witch, so it's just, yeah, it's so powerful. I love it. I love it. So I'm so looking forward to hopefully getting into some of the lore behind who Scarlet Witch is. I don't know if we'll have time for that next week, but I hope there's a little bit of exposition there because, you know, in the comics, the moniker Scarlet Witch, I think, is something passed down through Wanda's family, and her mum was Scarlet Witch and now she is. I believe that's how it goes. But yeah, first time. Amazing. Alright, before I wrap up, let's talk about the post-credits scene. Where, you know, Director Douchebag's at it again. And he has managed to reassemble Vision. He mentions that they've tried multiple times to try and disassemble and reassemble him to get him to work. Nothing worked. And then he's like, I never thought we would take something from the source. Like, you know, he's managed to, you know, take some of Wanda's power from the... And I love that they brought this back. Because, you know, when Wanda confronted them, when she comes outside of the Hex for the first time and tells them to shove it where the sun don't shine, she brings out the drone, which is kind of, you know, emanating that red glow, that red magic of hers, and she throws it at them. So here, that drone comes back and is the reason that Hayward is actually able to power this new version of Vision. The Stark Industries, ironically, drone from the 80s that they used. And yeah, he boots him up, or launches him, as he says, and this is our Project Cataract that Hayward mentioned earlier in a couple episodes ago, and now the name Cataract seems to kind of make sense considering, you know, vision, eyes, cataract, eyes, it's all the same kind of thing, so it's his version of Vision is called Cataract, and it's this white vision. Creepy looking thing. And he, you know, he comes to life. He doesn't have a stone on his head, he's got something else there, and his eyes are glowing, this weird white blue colour, and he's looking at his hand, and he's just, you know, he just seems void of any emotion, personality, any of that, and that's directly from the comics. There was a whole storyline involving White Vision, I'm pretty sure, in the comics, where they couldn't, like Hank Pym reassembled Vision, and they couldn't, the person that they used, I think it's Wonder Man, they used his personality as the basis for Vision in the comics, but he refused to do it again, so then we had White Vision, who is basically Vision without the heart of him, the personality, everything that makes Wanda love him. So this is her Vision, but not her Vision. And yeah, and so that's going to bring up some feels next week, because I have no doubt that Hayward's plan is to launch White Vision into the Hex and to kill Wanda, I'm guessing. I don't know. That's my theory. But then we can't forget that Wanda's Vision that she created that's in the Hex is on the way still to confront Wanda and figure out what's going on. And so he's going to come upon this scene of Agatha and the twins and Wanda, and then White Vision's going to show up. It's just going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts. It's going to be bonkers. Anyway, that's all from me. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover. It was such a great episode. It's probably my favorite so far. I mean, they keep getting better every time, and I'm so happy about it. It's just brilliant. This show is just amazing, way beyond expectations. It's blown all of our minds, and it's, you know, it is officially the #1 show in the world right now. Everyone's watching it. A lot of people are watching it anyway. But just hats off to the writers for this episode in particular. And to not only Kathryn Hahn, but Elizabeth Olsen for just going the extra mile to deliver this performance. Like, she's just crushing it so bad. I love it. She's amazing. They're amazing. Oh, okay. One more episode to go, guys. One more, and then we're done. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so sorry these videos keep getting longer every time I put them out. I just have so much to say. There's so much to unpack. Anyway, feelings. So thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please feel free to like, share, subscribe to Fred the Alien, so you can keep up to date with all the latest of my WandaVision ramblings. There's only one more to go, and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier will be starting in a couple of weeks after that. So, whew, here we go. All right. Thanks again. Until next time, I've been Kendall Richardson, and you've just experienced non-scripted ramblings.